patient advocacy issue, right? Yeah. So one thing she wanted me to show you was that there is an error on her video clips. And what it is she holds up a sign, and it says, I wish, and she wants you to say, what would you fill in?
What would you fill in?
What would you fill in after I wish blank, right?
I wish I didn't make mistakes.
So I wish I had a blue diamond, or whatever, right? Unfortunately, the next sign is incorrect. It says, I miss, which is not very different than I wish, as Becky pointed out to me. So this would be, I miss my blue diamond, right? What she meant it to be, so get in your head, I miss is not supposed to be there. What is supposed to be there is I want, all right?
I miss should be there, I want should not be there.
Look at that, I screwed up.
we did it together, pal.
Good visual aids, though. Good visual aids.
I even took notes.
Thank you, Dale. Yeah, so it was, I thought it would be a really cool idea to have these little video clips, and I was really working hard, put these note cards together, and I totally missed that I wrote the wrong thing. So it's either I wish or I miss. And some of you have already given us some note cards. There's some very powerful things in there that actually brought me to tears during Karen's presentation, because you really thought through what the meaning is to you. But we'd love to do these little 15-second clips, and so if you'll find Bob or me after this session, we're going to do little videos for anybody that wants to participate. It's not mandatory, obviously, but if you want to get your message heard, and I've heard a lot of really impactful things, just, it feels like we've been here a few days already, but over the last 24 hours, I've heard so many things that could be helpful to the medical community, and that's really who I want to reach out to and help them understand what we're going through. I want to start with saying a phrase, Cuidano lepidum nauum nobellum. Does anybody know Latin? Anybody know what that means? I don't either. When I was 12, my sister was 16, and she was in high school, and she was taking a Latin class. And she rehearsed this so many times that I memorized it too. I can't remember what I did yesterday, but I can remember a speech that my sister had to give when I was 12, several decades ago. Anyway, as Dale said, I am a survivor, and it's been 9 years. It took 27 months to get diagnosed. It was quite a journey, which was the reason why I felt like putting it in writing. And as who was talking about it, the therapist from Baylor today were saying, is your gas tank empty? I recently resigned my job, not because my gas tank is completely empty, but because I want to drive a different direction. I'm ready to put this thing on the map. I'm tired of hearing all the frustrations that we've shared, where we don't know the diagnosis or we don't have a good path for treatment. And I really want to focus today on how do we team together to do this. So that's where I'm going to start. The other thing is, I had a recent neurology visit. It's rare that you leave a neurologist and you find out something new and exciting, right? I saw my neurologist, and they said, the good thing is we know on the left, there's nothing right. And on the right, there's nothing left. So it's clear that all of us feel somewhat of a dismissed aspect, right? Either there's the isolation because it's invisible. People look at us, we don't look ill, right? We don't have cancer, so they've never heard of it. And so there's a lot of isolation in this illness. There's a lot of frustration. As Karen acknowledged, there's a lot of things we don't know. If you looked at her chart, over 50% of the causes are unknown. I fit in that category, many of you do too. So it can be very isolating. But think about the professionals that spent their time with us here today, and the ones that have spent time with us at previous conferences. They're here because they do care. And maybe there's not enough of them, or maybe there's not enough of them who have seen us, but there's a lot of people that do care. And it's because we mean something to them. Karen wouldn't have come all the way from Tennessee if she didn't care and was passionate about encephalitis. Dr. Chalk wouldn't have spent his morning on a Saturday when he's seen patients all week, and he's going to see them all next week and the week after, if he wasn't passionate about that. When we approached Baylor, we asked for one person to attend, and they sent 3. I mean, that's powerful, right? We do care, they do care, we do matter. So, the good news is there are things going on behind the scenes. And I want to share some of those things. Karen talked about the consortium. I want to talk a little bit more about that. It is a group that is ad hoc. We wish it was more formalized. It's gone through varying degrees of formality where they've had a very clear mission. They've had different leadership where it was strong at some points, and then there was a little glitch, and then other people took over. And it's kind of going through that again now. But I think now is the opportunity for us to collectively come together and figure out how can we help them in that next phase. Because I think largely we can drive what that agenda is. How can we ask them, here are the things we should be researching. Here are the things that we want you to know. Here's how we want you to advocate for us, especially in the neurology field. I think in hearing most people's stories, the biggest frustration is not necessarily the doctor in the emergency room. Sometimes it is. It's not necessarily the therapists that give us great treatment like the panel. It's the neurologists who, maybe they've seen one case before, maybe they've seen 3, but none of them are the same, right? If yours is unknown, hers is autoimmune, and somebody else is West Nile, they don't all act alike, right? Autoimmune is very different, and it's long-term outcomes than some of the herpes or West Nile, right? So we need to help them help each other, and that's where I want to focus. So Dr. Chalk mentioned this morning 2 of the new types of encephalitis or brain injuries that are coming to light. People are knowing more about them. I'm going to start first on the one he didn't talk about, and that's one that Karen just mentioned. That's anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis. The good thing is that there's a high probability of a good outcome if it's diagnosed and treated. The bad news is if it's not treated, it can lead to catatonia or loss of consciousness. And so it's important. It's great that Susanna wrote this book. And I'm glad that many of you have read it, Brain on Fire. That is getting the news out. That's getting publicity. There have been so many reports on this. And as Karen showed, if you go back in history, 30 years, and you retest some of these post-mortem cases, or even ones that have been retested that are alive, this has been there for quite a while. It's not a new phenomenon. It's just one that was only discovered 10 years ago. So kudos to the doctor that discovered it. I think there's 2 of you that are impacted by that in this room. And, so we're thankful for that. But, that's going to get encephalitis a little bit more known in the medical community. Dr. Chalk also mentioned the veterans that are coming back. A lot of them have been in bomb blasts where they come back with traumatic brain injury. And even though that's not necessarily a form of encephalitis, it's getting brain injury a lot more on the agendas of the medical community that has somewhat, not seen that as more prominent in the past. And the last one is, and one that he also mentioned, is the one that's been talked about in the football league, the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE is what they call it. And it's the multiple blows to the head. And they've gone post-mortem to more than 100 football players and analyzed their brains and discovered that they did have, in fact, CTE. And so now that this is a thing, and the NFL is taking some ownership and saying, oops, we probably should have told you that you were at risk of this. Even Bo Jackson, who is one of the NFL All-American players, has even come out and said, I would not have played football if I'd known that I was at risk. And I do not condone this for my own family as well. So that's a pretty big statement for somebody that's made millions and millions of dollars to come out and say, it's not worth it. Why would you put your brain at exposure like that? So that's the good news, is there are things going on, and it is becoming more relevant. And so let's talk about what's going on behind the scenes. So, I think when we look at making encephalitis more well known, there's two categories, I guess I'll look at it. One is we all live in a culture where nobody knows what encephalitis is. When I talk to friends or family or whatever, and they say, how you doing? And they've kind of been mildly aware of my path, I usually just, say, oh, everything's good. And, I've got to, I take prescriptions. You'll never see my residuals, hopefully. And I take medications, whatever. So there's the community around us, our personal community, where we want people to be more aware of what encephalitis means and its long-term impact. And then the second part, again, which is where I want to focus, is the medical community and helping them understand that it's not just, okay, there was an acute phase, your brain was inflamed, it's not inflamed anymore, you can go home, you look great, call me if you need anything, and so let's focus on that for a minute. Karen was very humble, not just in what she doesn't know and what the medical community at large doesn't know, but she was also very humble in talking about what the consortium has already accomplished and what they're still working on. So the consortium largely is 85 doctors around the globe, not in the US, around the globe. So you look at 85 doctors, there's more than 85 doctors in one hospital in one city, right? So that is a very, very small population, and they have their day jobs. So I think we have to come together with them to say, here's what we need to move forward. These folks are not just infectious disease doctors like Karen, but also neurologists. There's also academia that's represented. And then Bob and I have had the very nice fortune of meeting them 5 years ago, that we were invited as keynotes, and they just kind of kept us there. So we've been kind of representing the patient viewpoint, and we want more of that viewpoint to share with them. There is a very exciting paper that's going to be released hopefully at the end of the year, and let's talk about that for a second. First, I want to ask one question. Boy, I just got new glasses and I still can't see. Never mind, it doesn't matter. Okay, so this new report has so many elements to it that I'm excited about. Let me I'd rather look at the slide. The report hopefully will come out at the end of next year. I touched on this very lightly last year because we were just in the beginning of putting it together. Well, we started it last year. Oh, hopefully the end of this year, right. It takes a long time to publish things in the medical community. There's so many peer reviews. I mean, just the group itself, I think there were, 10 or 12 of us working on it. And it's gone through multiple iterations, and then they have to share it with the rest of the consortium to make sure they're all cool with it. And then it's got to go to a whole other medical society for them to review it and make sure it's scientifically conducted. And then it finally gets published. So it's a very long process. I had no idea. So there's going to be two versions of it. And really what it is on the long-term impact of encephalitis and having a standardized, formalized way of treating it. So right now, if 5 of you went to the doctor, 1 of you, or probably 2 of you, will get no path at all. One person, they may say, oh, let's send you to physical therapy, and maybe 2 other people get occupational or speech therapy. It's not all the same, right? So what this report is going to be is basically a toolkit that says, here are the tests you need to run on anybody that's had encephalitis, and here are the things that need to be conducted so that they get the right treatment and the right recovery. So it's very exciting. The things that excite me the most is we're going to have 2 versions of it. So one that you can hand to your doctor that's written in medical jargon that only they can understand, and one written in layman's terms for us so that we can share that among all the survivors. It underscores the long-term impact of encephalitis. Nothing else I've ever read really tells the whole future. It just kind of focuses on the here and now instead of what happens later down the road. Very few of the doctors have seen patients on a long-term basis, so it was a real eye-opener when Bob and I first met Carol and Karen and all these folks. We were at a conference and we were the first presenters that day, and they were shocked to find all the different residuals that we had. And they're looking at us and they're thinking, well, you look normal to me. You know, there's nothing wrong with you. You're presenting, by, you know, for goodness sake. But as we talk through our, you know, senses of smell that have changed, or our sleep issues, or vertigo, or short-term memory loss, and all these different things, they were shocked. And so it's been an eye-opener for them, and has kind of changed the path of not just looking at the etiology or the cause of what happened, which is extremely important, but also, you know, how do you work with this in the future? It's the first paper I've ever seen that acknowledges encephalitis as a brain injury, which I think is huge for those of us in the United States especially, because many of us have gone to the doctor and they prescribe something, and by golly, it gets rejected because insurance doesn't recognize it as a brain injury. It's like, you know, what is encephalitis? I don't know. Let's just you know, put a random diagnosis code and hope, you know, for the best. And many of my tests have either been rejected or I've paid out of pocket. My neuropsych exam was $4,500. They didn't pay for a dime of it. That is just insane. It's, you know, and so nobody should have to go through that. So by having it in writing, this is something we can take not just to our doctors, but to the insurance companies to be able to say, hey, you know, this is a brain injury. It also looks at, you know, like I said, just better recovery, hopefully, for, you know, a formalized standard process. So let me talk a little bit about, I'm just going to give you all a second to read some of these. These are some of the actual sentences that come out of the report. So if you look at this first one, it acknowledges that there's hardly been any research on encephalitis. It acknowledges that we have neurologic functions that can result in a significant impairment. My favorite one is this one, the perception that, or misperception that it's, you know, you got it, your brain is no longer inflamed, and then you're done. I waited 6 months to see a doctor here in Dallas at a very esteemed facility, and I was so excited. You know, the day that I went into the appointment, I was expecting gold mine, right? I'm like, I've been waiting for this for a long time. And I get there, and I told him, I said, you know, I'm having sleep issues, I'm having short-term memory issues, I can't focus, you know, this is very critical to my job. And she said, you don't have encephalitis anymore. And I said, well, are the residuals from encephalitis? She goes, no, encephalitis means your brain is inflamed. You know, young lady, your brain is no longer inflamed. Like, I understand that it's not inflamed now, but when it was, it caused damage. And she was, but you don't have it anymore. I said, okay, we're not really getting anywhere. What if I had short-term memory loss and difficulty sleeping, you know, blah, 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 but I had a stroke? And she said, oh, well, that's easy. I would do this, this, and this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm educating the doctor. You know, so I think that's why this one statement is so important to me, especially is that one experience where, you know, there are so many doctors that are not familiar with it who can make such a crazy statement such as, you know, it's over. And this last one, I think, probably hits home for all of us. I was really surprised when they did the comparison. They compared encephalitis to both TBI and stroke. And the CDC considers that TBI cases are actually much more mild than encephalitis. They actually recognized encephalitis as a severe brain injury. So again, to have that in writing, to take that to your doctor, to take that to your insurance company, I think is just amazing. I found this quote. This is a young man that was grew up in California. He grew up in a area where he could have easily gone into gangs or, you know, drugs, whatever, and he fought hard to stay in school. He was admittedly not a very good student. He admittedly said that if he hadn't played sports, he probably wouldn't have, you know, gotten out of high school. But he turned his life around. He made some really big challenges. He forced himself to go into college. He's now working with underprivileged kids and kids on the street. And I really just thought this captured where we are in a way of saying, you know, we can be frustrated, but we have some choices of what to do with that. Let me just see a show of hands. Does anybody have at least one of these symptoms? Okay, keep your hand up if you have at least 3 of these symptoms. Okay, 5. Okay, I think the point is taken. If you think about some of our previous speakers today, they talked about, Dr. Chalk said, you know, we can be our old self, we can stay stuck. So that's, to me, that's blocking the noise. You know, we're stuck. I'm gonna be my old self. I'm not gonna have any goals. I'm just gonna be mad at the world for the rest of my life. And believe me, I was there for about 2 years. And my family can testify to that, where I was just angry at the world. We can try to be antisocial and hide our identity and play like nothing happened and try to be as normal as possible. And believe me, I tried the best to do that in my career so that I could keep my job. And I'm so free now to be who I am. And then this last part is, or we can find a path. And I would really like to focus on being part of the solution instead of coming to these. And it's great because we all understand the frustration, we can vent, everyone understands each other. But let's also be active in coming up with a solution. So what I want to do is talk through just a couple of ideas, and then I'd love for each table to maybe just brainstorm with each other. There's a few examples of things going on. Suzanne Spector is a mom in California. She has twins, and her daughter Nicole died of encephalitis after 2 days about 6 years ago. And she does an annual Walk to Cure Encephalitis out in California. She raises the money, she gives it to the Consortium to do research, and it's a powerful way of giving back and not making her daughter's loss of life in vain. I think it's tremendous, and I'd love to see maybe it be done in 2 cities this year, maybe 3 cities. There's a lot of opportunities to participate in research. There's some new ideas that we have in terms of needing the power of the database that we have right here, regardless of what type of encephalitis or unknown causes too, where we can participate and collect data and be able to provide that back so they can do analysis. And then, this is probably the wrong word, database, but many of you have shared the woes of not finding a good doctor, but you have at least probably one good doctor that you found. Hopefully at least one. We should build a database or a reference or a repository of who those people are so that by region we can say, if you live in Georgia, here's somebody you can go to. If you live in New York, here's somebody you can go to. Somebody that actually understands it. Because the cost that it takes, not just in money, but in time, to go from doctor to doctor to doctor, trying to find somebody that understands, is very costly, you know, for all of us. And so if we have a database or repository that says, you know, here's who you should go to for therapy, for neurology, whatever it is, then that would be just outstanding to have that. There's a few things going on. One idea that we have is to have a standardized curriculum for medical schools. One of the ideas that sparked this is about 4 years ago I had a botched hip surgery, and about a year and a half later I had the privilege of having a young lady that was between getting her bachelor's and going to med school that helped take care of me. She helped me through all the physical therapy, everything, and she's in medical school now. And on encephalitis days, she'll do a screenshot and show me what she's learning. And I get the information and I go, it's not right. And it's really sad that they're teaching people, and it's not malicious, it's not, you know, it's just out of pure ignorance. So if we can take the power of the Karens of the world and combine them with our collective knowledge to build a common curriculum and present that to medical schools, and I think that would be just very powerful. Another thing, Bob did this about a little over a year ago. One of the consortium members is with Brown University, and he's a very open-minded guy. He's very, very smart. And instead of just teaching the medical school on slides, he actually brought Bob and interviewed him in front of the class so that they could put a face and a name with our illness. And Alan Tunkel is his name. He interviewed Bob and talked about the onset, what tests were run, what the long-term treatments were, what his ailments are now. And they will remember a person more than they will a slide. And so, if we can find, speakers in different regions to speak to these medical school classes, I mean, again, putting a name is going to be way more memorable. And just the young lady that I was mentioning a while ago that's in med school has already seen 2 encephalitis patients, one of them anti-NMDA, by the way, just in her, 2 years of school already. So, and she's being educated. She already knew me, obviously, so she understood it. So that in itself could make a really big impact. I already mentioned the referral network, and I'm going to try to be quick on time since we're running behind. So I'm going to skip over a couple of these. But there's a new person that joined the consortium about a year ago. I can't remember his last name right now, but he's out of Cleveland Clinic. And he is a very big proponent of encephalitis. He's going to be representing the consortium at the Infectious Disease Week, and he's really a new go-getter that's going to help us get this on the map. There's a doctor from Mayo Clinic that's a neurologist that's very passionate about it, and his passion is more about training and learning, so that's another good avenue. So there are, I guess part of my message is there are good people out there, and they do care. It's just there's so few of them that it's hard to see what's going on behind the scenes, but there is a lot going on. What I'd like to do here is just pause for 10 minutes and just ask each table to pick a leader and brainstorm some ideas. It could be around raising awareness. It could be, if somebody knows somebody that's a big name and we have access to them, could there be a poster child for encephalitis? Who are the knowledgeable doctors that you know? What type of research would you want to be done if you had a wish list? Would it be on therapies? Would it be on medications? Would it be on, I think there was a good question raised around, well, if you have herpes virus and then you have autoimmune later, I mean, that would be a great study beyond what was just presented in a short study. So let's just pause for 10 minutes. Think about it. We'll collect the ideas. If anybody wants to share their ideas here, then that would be great too. And then we'll close and give some time back for a break. So everybody pick a leader and brainstorm, and let's come out with some great ideas.
Twitter, similar problem, but I think Nick's point about Twitter is at least there's a rapid fire thing going on. So and you can get a lot of followers. So if anyone is interested in doing that, and Nick's point also was who do you want to be your Twitter pal who is the most followed? So that then that becomes a very huge audience, right? So you're creating a huge audience intrinsically. And then a blog, but that requires somebody to write the blog, right? So we need a volunteer to have a blog on encephalitis. So, all right, that's social media. Visibility, we have various things. Advertising in mainstream media. So that would be, this is going to be expensive usually, right? So like a TV ad or print ad tends to be rather expensive, but maybe local newspapers are less. Certainly local online newspapers are less.
Well, how would you advertise? What would you advertise? How and what would you advertise?
I can't.
Tell me.
How and what would you advertise?
Oh, so these would be sort of public interest advertisements. Sorry, public interest advertisements showing a person with encephalitis and how you could probably help someone with encephalitis. So these would be the kinds of things we used to get on TV all the time because their stations were required to do these public interest ads, which we don't have very much anymore because I think they've cut back on the amount they need. But it would be the same groups, patient, family, doctors, giving a public interest ad. So same thing, local TV news stories, and we certainly get that. So I live in a small city, lots of local TV news. What's the car that crashed? What's the other car that crashed? What's the house that's on fire? But there's also medical stories, often public interest stories, a person with a face. So we like that at the table. There's a face, you put a person in the community that's there talking. And the question is, do you just have the survivor, or could you also get a caregiver, which would be ideal. So certainly those two would probably be easy, then the medical professional. And that's where we weren't sure, but then we thought we would do the same thing on radio. Local NPR stations love these kinds of stories. They're more likely you might be able to get the physician on radio. So if you have contacts with media, those would be probably the same person to do TV and radio. Okay, now moving on. We've got...
Dale?
Yeah.
That would also be especially useful on International Encephalitis Day. Try and get that kind of...
Oh yeah, so you could have, yeah, actually that's really good. So like, it would be a special story on that day, right? Yeah, I like that. Because then they actually have a good way to segue into the story without just saying, oh hi, I'm going to talk to you about encephalitis. For encephalitis research, at the table we thought there were two things that we want to see much more research done on. And these are just two we came up with in a random. One, autoimmune, and the second, recurrent. So those are two things we thought need a lot more focus, a lot more research put into. The next is, oh, and this is two things. How to properly educate the physicians and nurses who are taking care of us, right? So we thought that the medical school curriculum, and it's a little dicey here because they're really set quite strongly by the national board of what medical schools have to teach. So they're very limited on what you can get them to add. So in my opinion, that would be better to do what's called postgraduate. So it's when they're in their fellowships and then their internships. And then you're getting ones that are neurologists or infectious disease people anyway. So that, I think, would be the more ideal place to get them to focus those people on this disease. Nick made a good point that those are the people that are the most stressed out because they are working sometimes 24-hour days. So they're going to be the hardest to get to, but that's a good one. And then easier, probably, continuing medical education. So that's the people who are already physicians. They have to take CME courses to stay licensed. They could take a CME course in infectious disease that has encephalitis in it. So I think that actually would be most likely to be able to get done. And then I think a great idea came up as we segued from that was nursing schools, because we all had great nurses. And so I think the more nurses we can get involved, the better. So that was our last thing.
Excellent. Is there another group that would like to share? Roxanne, come on down. You were the next contestant.
So some of the things that I've been doing for Ruben, I started a Facebook page and it's public and it's called Ruben's Journey. We have close to 5,000 followers right now and they're all over. I have the Philippines, I have a lot of folks from Australia, lots of folks of course from the United States, all over the place. So what I do on Ruben's Journey is I just post all the updates on what Ruben is going through, challenges. It's very real, it's very raw. Some of you guys have probably seen some of the videos that I recently posted, like for example the one from Ruben's appointment last week. The other things, Dale also talked about news and newspaper. I have connections for that in San Antonio, Texas. Ruben's actually had a story on KSAT 12 News. And I have a journalist for San Antonio Express News. He just had his second article published on that. And so I think it's huge in San Antonio. That's our really big focus right now, is raising awareness around encephalitis. We're still getting a lot of the same questions. What the heck is encephalitis? So I'm hoping by doing these things that it will continue to raise awareness. Another thing we talked about at the table is just going to the schools where the focus is medical. So going to these universities, going to these colleges and just talking to, I don't know, admissions, counseling, whatever it is, and just asking how to partner with them to talk more about encephalitis and how we can work together to help the students. Maybe it'll help them with credits, and it would be 100% volunteer time on our part. Medical professionals who are knowledgeable, a lot of you guys have talked about how we are educating our doctors right now, and that's terrible. It's just terrible that we have to tell them what they're not doing right, and they hear but they don't truly listen, right? So making sure that they truly are listening to what's going on, and talking more about the different things that we're feeling, having a better understanding, questioning everything they're doing. Recently we learned that some things that we thought were going right were not right, and we've decided to kind of take a break from surgeries and stuff with Ruben. Today I've learned that there's so many other types of encephalitis out there that I've never even heard of, and to be honest, that scares me. I didn't know what encephalitis was when Ruben was diagnosed with it. It took 4 days to diagnose him, and when his neurologist came in and said, hey, I have the final diagnosis, it's viral encephalitis, we were like deers in headlights. We had no idea what it was, what to expect. Long term, short term, what do I do? So I definitely would like to see a lot more research. I think that involves all of our survivors and all of the caregivers, definitely getting more involved with medical, like Mayo and stuff like that, finding better ways of testing. And I've also heard a lot of, well, I have viral encephalitis, and I have a seizure disorder. What are we doing to treat it? Can't really treat encephalitis, you can only treat the seizure disorder, so maybe working more to find a cure. Yesterday I was talking to some followers on Ruben's journey, and Ashley and Brian, and Ashley told me, you know, you're kind of like the bulldog. You're out here for all of the people with encephalitis, really mad and really frustrated and saying, I am going to find a cure, and so that's definitely what I'm doing right now. So that's kind of what we talked about at the table. So if anyone needs help with any of that, San Antonio area or Texas, I will advocate 100% for all of you. We're in it together.
I was going to ask one more group, but I know that we are over and people are probably eager for a break. Joel?
Becky, can I give one challenge? It'll be really easy and really quick.
Yes, please, sir.
All right, so I was asked to make this one. Some of you work for corporations. Some of you know people who work for corporations. Some of you have friends that work for corporations. I will not say the one that I currently work with. But the world is changing, and it's changing in a way that can help your friends, and you probably don't know about it. I'm going to give you a really short example. I work for a major corporation. We are required to give away X tens of millions of dollars a year because we're an American corporation and I'm in management there, and you just have to do that. What did we always do? This was like taxis before Uber. We gave the money to the United Way. And every year the employees would fill out their employee survey. We want more impact in what the company does. So this year we changed. And many of the companies that you guys may work for, or your friends or family may work for, either have changed in the last few years or are going to change. And this is what's happening. Instead of just writing a blank check to United Way or one of the other big five, Red Cross or one of those big ones, because that's easy for the company, social media and electronics within the company allows the employee to designate the giving. Now, for the company I work for, you have to put up before we shut up. If an employee, Mr. Denny here, works 25 hours in a year, I'm going to pay volunteers for any 503 or any other charitable organization that's listed on our website, or we'll give it. We're going to pay them $10 an hour as if Gary was working for them. It's amazing the ability that is changing around you, because what we used to do is just write a check. The company's not going to do anything more. We don't get the message out. We write memos, we write emails that nobody reads. But what I've been trying to be an advocate for in the engineering community at the companies the company I work with, is to say, go look it up. In 10 minutes, you can be sending your money to, and I'm always making what they're interested in. This is one of the things I'm interested in. I had a guy come into my office the other day, said, Joel, well, I don't do any of that stuff. I don't do medical stuff. I said, what do you do, Jason? He says, I shag pucks every Saturday at the youth hockey thing. I said, about 10 hours a week, you do that, right? How long is the season? Oh, about 10, 12 weeks. I says, how would you like the Boeing company if you spent 3 minutes and filled out the thing on there to send them a check for $700? So just be advised, even if it hasn't changed, it is changing. And it's changing in the same way that it used to be. If you went to the airport and you wanted to go home, you had one choice. You got a friend or a taxi cab. Now you do Uber. It seems like it's the same thing, but it ain't. Sorry, Becky. Didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, love it, Joel. It's a great point because the company I just left, we're seeing a wave of CSR initiatives, corporate social responsibility, that are built into proposals, and you've got to say how much of your bottom line is going to contributing, or they will eliminate you from the list. So that's a brilliant point. Thanks for bringing it up.
Did you direct money in the right place?
I left, so I can do this.
Can you help me go through this? Sure. Springs, we had a pretty good idea.
All right. Sure, please.
So we came up with an idea for a camp for encephalitis survivors, for children and stuff like that.
That'd be cool.
It's for like, like they have the diabetic camps where all the kids can just
Yeah.
go there and be normal for a day or the week or whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
And separate it from the caregivers, have nurses on staff.
Yeah.
So we're not, as a survivor, not stuck with our caregivers.
Yeah.
Be a nice little break. They're great to be around, but a little break would be fun. And then we could also, to bring awareness to, is have a marathon to help provide compensation for kids that can't afford to go to camp.
Yes, to raise money for it. Yeah.
Yes, stuff like that.
About a 3K. I'm not a marathon.
Yeah, so that was one of our ideas. We have
That's a great idea. Good one.
See what the power is? I mean, we can come up with some really cool stuff. We can just work together. So I would ask each of the leaders of the group to come, please just drop it here so that we can collect all the ideas. We'll publish them all out to everybody. And again, if you are interested in doing the video clips, we're wanting this to be something that can be very, not just high impactful, but emotional. I read a couple of the cards during Karen's presentation. I got all teary because it was really good stuff. So put down your thoughts.
Where did they go?
You're going to follow Bob out of the room if you want to participate. And these are literally 15-second clips, so it's not going to take very long.
If you don't want to go immediately, though, for about an hour, I'm going to, where the bar is, the far corner away from the bar.
The priests always know where the bars are.
They don't know what I do. They don't know what you're talking about. Away from the bar, over toward the kind of pool area, you'll see the gold couch.
Okay, and remember, it's I wish or I miss.
You're coming too, right?
I wish or I miss. He and I are going that way after I collect all your wonderful, brilliant ideas. And thank you. I appreciate everybody's time and attention. And I'm around for questions, but let's close now so that. Okay, one question.
Yes.
I know. I wish or I miss. Just cross out one and write miss. Yeah, that was my encephalitis brain. I've got extras right here. Perfect. Everybody good? You've been awesome. Thank you guys.
Good, or I thought. That was good.
You're good.